Hi everyone, I'm Shakira Curry and this is my final presentation for INFM635 at Mercer University. So our final presentation scenario was about a patient named John who has been experiencing some symptoms and decided he needed to see his family physician. Once he saw his family physician, he explained the symptoms to the physician and the physician ordered some tests on him and based on those tests referred him to a pulmonologist. John went to visit that pulmonologist and also explained his symptoms to him. And based on what John told him, he ordered more tests. So these is just a couple UML models based on the situation. So this is my use case diagram, and it's just all the actors in the scenario and how they interact with the system. So John interacts with the health information system by booking his appointment online with the family physician through their app. Next would be the family physician. He interacts with the system by ordering blood cultures for John once he hears all of his symptoms and ordering a chest x-ray for him. The next actor in the scenario would be the unit secretary at the family physician's office, and she interacts with the health information system by booking John's referral appointment to the pulmonologist. The next actor would be the receptionist at the pulmonologist's office. She confirms John's appointment once he arrives and confirms his identity, any insurance information he has, name, date of birth, make sure everything is correct on file. And then the last actor will be the pulmonologist. And he interacts with the system by pulling up John's medical record, electronic medical record, and looking at his history, and also pulling up the previous results from John's x-ray at the family physician's office, and also his blood culture results from that same visit. He also interacts with the system by ordering a scratch test based on John's symptoms and also other allergy blood tests. So this next model is my sequence diagram, and it just diagrams how each person in more detail interacts with each other and in what sequence they interact with each other. So the first interaction is between John and the web app. He signs into the online app. The app then sends back all of the available appointments that the doctor's office has. John then chooses a 10 a.m. appointment on the app, and then the app sends John a confirmation for that appointment. The next interaction is between John and the family physician, and then the family physician and his lab that he sends his blood work to. So John visits the family physician. The physician comes in and examines John, and John explains all of his symptoms to him. So based off of those symptoms, the family physician orders lab work and blood cultures, and then the lab sends the results back to the family physician's office, and then the family physician refers John to a pulmonologist based off of his symptoms and the results for the lab work. The next interaction is between John and the unit secretary. The John interacts with the unit secretary by asking her to be the one to make the appointment with the pulmonologist or make the referral appointment, and she then confirms the referral appointment with John. John then visits the pulmonologist's office, so that's the next interaction with him and the receptionist in the pulmonologist's office. So he visits the office, and she then confirms all of his information, the appointment time, and his identity, and make sure they have his date of birth, name, all of his insurance information in the system correctly. And the next interaction is between John and the pulmonologist. So he goes back to see the pulmonologist, explains his symptoms, and then the pulmonologist pulls up his health data and all of his previous lab results from when the family physician ordered the blood work. So then he confirms this history with John just to make sure he hasn't had any past medical problems that's not listed in his electronic record. Then the next interaction is between the pulmonologist and the lab that he sends his lab work to. So the pulmonologist then orders allergy labs, so allergy blood work for John, and also he orders a scratch test for John and sends that to the lab, and then the lab sends the results back to him in his office. These first two diagrams weren't hard at all for me to complete. I didn't have really any issues with the use case diagram aside from the fact that I didn't add the receptionist at the pulmonologist's office to the use case diagram in my initial draft, but later went back and added her because she is the one who confirms John's identity and his appointment, and he doesn't do it himself. This sequence diagram, the only issue that I had initially was I didn't include either one of the labs for the hospital. I didn't include the family physician lab or the pulmonologist office lab initially. I made it look like there was a turnaround interaction here where the family physician ordered the lab work, but then once I realized that the physician lab and also the pulmonologist office lab had to send the results back, I went back and added them both in. So this next model is an activity model on the same scenario. And so this is my starting point. And as the beginning is John starting to feel sick, then I have a transition here where it forks off into him making an online appointment with the app and confirming his personal information, and that technically happens simultaneously. He makes the appointment online and the information is confirmed, and then that leads to him the app confirming the appointment with him, because the confirmation of the appointment can't happen until he initiates the appointment online and they've confirmed all his information. So after the appointment is confirmed, John visits the family physician and he explains his symptoms to him, and based on that I have another fork where it splits off into the physician ordering blood work and also ordering chest x-ray, because they also happen simultaneously, but the results come back at two different times. So the physician orders the blood work is drawn, and then the results are read, and also he orders the x-ray, the image is taken and the image is read, but all of those happen at different times. The blood work can be drawn at 4 and the x-ray won't be taken until 6, so the results will come in at different times. But you can't have this state where the family physician refers John to the pulmonologist without the results from the lab work or the images from the x-ray. So once those are back, they join to where the family physician refers John to the pulmonologist, and then his appointment with the pulmonologist is confirmed. John visits the pulmonologist's office, and then the pulmonologist pulls up John's medical record and test results. And based off of that and the symptoms that John told him he's been experiencing, there then is another fork where the pulmonologist turns to order tests. So the pulmonologist orders a scratch test and other allergy tests like blood work. So at the same time they're ordered, but they can be done at 2 separate times. So the sample is drawn for the scratch test and the results are read, and then the blood work is drawn and then the results are read, because it could be something where the lab has to draw this blood, but with the scratch test maybe the John's nurse could do it, so they would come back at 2 different times. And once these results are read, they could lead to a decision. So they both join to the decision. And the decision portion would be confirming that John has allergies. And he could either have tested positive on either one of the tests for allergies or no allergies found. So more than likely he tested positive for the allergies, and then that would lead into him being prescribed allergy shots or allergy medication. I didn't really have, I had more issues with this diagram than the other two simply because of the structure of it. I wasn't sure like where a decision should go. So initially I had a decision here and a decision here where before the family physician referred John to the pulmonologist, because the decision was going to be to refer him to the pulmonologist, but it wasn't, that decision didn't require like a true or false. So I decided to take it out there and just leave this decision down here. So that is it for my UML diagram. So my next diagram would be my HL7 messaging, and I chose to do version 3 simply because the diagram helps me to understand it better and gives me a better picture of it. And HL7 version 3 focuses mainly on a diagram, and also because it's so many moving parts in the scenario and they all have a relationship to the other. So I felt like the version 3 would be able to showcase all of the relationships and all of the information in one diagram. So the starting point would be John's pulmonologist referral visit, because that's the section I chose to take out and use for the HL7 messaging. So it starts with a lab collect. So that's when the pulmonologist ordered the scratch test and the allergy test results. So the lab collect has the reason code, the failure code, the activity time, just so you can know what the reasoning for the test was, what time the test was done, and the results for the value. And the relation between these two acts would be pertinent information. So that would be the scratch test results, and it will also have text, so the result can be listed, and a reason code, so they will know the reason for drawing this lab. And another relationship would be between the lab collect and the allergy test results, and that's also pertinent information. And I put a priority code on it just because it could be a stat order. And then the lab collect would be the subject of, so that would be the patient. So the lab collect is taken from the patient, and then the patient, you would need his name, I would say address, telephone number, just so you can have all that information on him. And it's joined to John, who is the patient. So name, date of birth, marital status, race, just some demographic information on him, so you'll have that. And then the patient is related to the caregiver, which is the pulmonologist. And you, in order for the pulmonologist to be on here, you need his name, his address, his telephone number, just so you can have that information should it be needed. So this is the second part of the final exam, and it is on SNOMED CT, and it's just as a vocabulary of clinical terms, and it's complex, and it's used over 300,000 terms. Each term has a numerical code or alphanumerical code that's used to assign a procedure, treatment, or diagnosis and symptoms with a patient record. And the next one would be ICD-10, and it's basically the same thing, a collection of codes that is used to report the signs and symptoms of a particular disease, and the detailed epidemiology, and also how to treat and manage the disease. And these are my references.